driving on the highway edition. I got 88 miles to go, so I got plenty of time to talk about this. Campaign diary for Site-27, Burke's Last Chance, Session 3. I guess this is the fourth video of these campaign diaries related to the campaign that I'm running. First, quick recap. The last session ended with the group coming into contact, finding their target, the fugitive Burke, who has stolen SCP-407. They find him in one of the last rooms of the copy of the Parliament building in London, SCP-1678. They find him in there, and he is extremely affected by the use of SCP-407. His entire head and upper shoulders are covered in vegetation, sunflowers, and in fact the sunflowers that are all over his head open up to reveal eyes and mouths. I wanted to give it a little extra horror flavor. Maybe I could have just left them as just sunflowers, but that just comes down to monster design and descriptions. They accidentally kind of provoke it by yelling, because they are smart, and a battle ensues. And this takes up the majority of the session, because this is a relatively complicated boss fight that has self-healing and the ability to constantly spawn minions, or what are effectively minions. It's set up. It has roughly, I figured, I wrote down 125 health question mark, because that's about the threshold. But I also, at that point, designed it for 4 characters. But then I had a 5th one join, so I upped its health before the fight. I upped it to around 150. I also gave it vulnerability to armor-piercing ranged attacks, with the idea that if they can use these armor-piercing rounds throughout on London to kind of trivialize the bobbies, but then once they get up to the fight with the Burke Drake, now they're out of armor-piercing rounds and they're going to have a harder time. That was the idea, but they ended up getting around a lot, pretty much every fight except for the initial fight at the outpost. They managed to sneak around everything else, which is great. So they had plenty of armor-piercing rounds, but they ended up being pretty much entirely focused on dealing with the vines that this creature constantly spawns every turn, or if it chooses to, as one of its legendary actions per round. For increased difficulty, I could have had it spawn more, given it more legendary actions. You know how these things go. But it ended up being relatively balanced. Some of the characters ended up not taking a whole lot of damage for a little bit, but then as they started to get rid of more vines, they started to take damage, or they started to get hit more often, and the Burke Drake managed to get up onto some of them. And they would have taken a lot more damage, and definitely 1 or 2 players would have went down if I could have rolled above a 5 for about 6 or 7 of the attacks that the vines made. That definitely would have put some of the players down, and then they would have had to deal with that. But it ended up not happening. That's how it goes. But the players ended up missing, I think, 4 or 5 attacks, so it kind of works out. But I was pretty happy with the balance that this boss struck. I designed it with their general attack bonuses, AC values, and total health pools in mind. But again, because it missed so often, it ended up being a little slightly weaker, or slightly less of a damaging encounter than I intended it, but that's how the dice go sometimes. I gave it more than a high enough attack bonus so that it should have hit roughly 70% of the time, something like that, because I still want bosses to miss the players. I don't want it to just not be able to hit, or I just want the players to not be able to avoid damage. But neither here nor there. The boss, like, it's constantly spawning these vines, and the vines, for each vine it has, it can make an additional attack with the vines, which is just like a slapping attack, and then it grapples on hit. No save at that point, it just grapples. They can try to get out of it later, but also I gave the vines around 20 health so that they could kill it in one shot with their ranged attacks if they roll high enough. They could use melee attacks, especially the ranger would definitely be able to take it out in one full round of ranged melee attacks if all of them hit. But again, they missed a lot, they rolled low, they didn't take advantage of the one or two weaknesses that it had. And in particular, the Artificer kept using Flaming Sphere, which would have taken advantage of the vine's weakness to fire, but the main body did not have a weakness to fire. And she kept colliding the Flaming Sphere with the body to get consistent damage on them. They worked together with an oil flask to get some big fire damage there, but again, it doesn't end up actually affecting the vines. If at any point she would have collided the Flaming Sphere with a vine instead of the main body, then that vine pretty much would have just instantly died, even if it made it save. And then probably would have had a little bit of residual fire damage, shoot up the vine and hit the burke tree. Not for a lot of damage, but for something. Definitely less than the Flaming Sphere itself would do to the main body. But, that's neither here nor there. And that's only in retrospect that I would have done that. But still. So, they were a little unfocused. Some of the players were focusing on the vines, some were focusing on the main body. So, if they had all focused on the vines first, to eliminate them as quickly as possible, they wouldn't, or it would have revealed that, oh no, we can't do this. Because if at any point the burke drake's turn starts and it has no vines, it grows 3. So that would have quickly had them realize, okay, no, we have to manage this a little more effectively instead of just trying to kill all the vines and then try to take out the, then we can start to do more damage to the burke drake, because it would refresh them at a higher rate if it does that. But that could have been a viable strategy too, because maybe they could take out the vines in 2 or 3 of their turns, and then the other 2 players, or the last 2 characters, could have then focused on the burke drake, and at that point they would have, at that point, then they would focus on the burke drake, and it wouldn't get as many vine attacks on its turn, because it would spend the turn growing the vines and not much else. And the vines wouldn't get a turn. Or no, they probably would, so yeah. But, so by keeping one or 2 of the vines around and killing them a bit slower, it kind of worked out for the best. I don't know exactly what the best strategy would have been, but that's part of the fun. Then, eventually, the players did manage to take advantage of the little interactable feature of it, which is SCP-407 is in a Walkman at burke drake's hip, and he's listening to it through a set of headphones. So, eventually the players did manage to attack it, and they attacked it twice. The first time they missed, the second time they just barely hit. because I gave this thing a graduated AC instead of just a flat AC. So the AC to hit it at all was like 23, I think. I can't remember. But if they roll a 23, a 24, or a 25, they get a glancing blow. And what happens is they would knock the Walkman off of the burke drake's hip, and it would clatter to the floor, and then start playing through the inbuilt speaker on this Walkman. Broadcasting 407 to the entire room, which in the moment is actually kind of nice. The burke drake continues to heal, but so do all the players. And they would not start taking deleterious effects until probably about 4 or 5 rounds in, after like 35 seconds have passed. Then they might start developing some negative effects, and you know, that's plenty of rounds to deal with it, and probably they could go crazy with all of their extra healing. So, but that ended up not happening. Instead, player attacked and just managed to hit a 26, which is what you need to actually destroy the Walkman instead. Destroyed it, then the burke drake stopped passively healing, and it got a little easier. It can still grow more vines, but now every time it grew a vine, it would take damage instead of it just being free. So then, after they destroyed that, I think they had like one more round, and they took out the burke drake. But at the very end, it had two tendrils left, and it grabs 2 players, and on its turn it lifts up and squeezes them, and they're down to like 3 HP. And the ranger who is up on, is one of the grappled targets, he manages to take out his rifle, take aim, shoot, and kill it right there, because he's using an armor-piercing round. He does like 20-something damage. Boom! Does a shitload of damage, does like about 10 damage over its health, and kills it. Battle over. Then they sort of recoup from their... fuck. This exit came up fucking quick. What the hell, man? No fucking signs? God. Man. Gotta have some better signs for this. That was murder on my transmission. Alright, so now I'm on the Garden State Parkway, because I guess I'm revealing my location. Oh no. I'm somewhere in Jersey. And for anyone who doesn't know, Site-27, the actual in-game site, is going to be based in the Pine Barrens underground. So that's fun. Anyway. And I am aware that there is a Site-27 already in existence, written for a different SCP, but so they manage to kill the burke drake. They take some stock. They start investigating the room, and they find this trap door under the carpet, and it leads into a tunnel, like a sewer system that goes under the river that in real London is behind Parliament, the River Thames, I think it is. Can't remember exactly, but. So they find, this underground sewer system that goes underneath this river. And they explore it for a little bit. And I don't reveal exactly what it is, because they didn't catch up to Burke ahead of time to actually talk to him before he transforms. And they didn't manage to get into his phone to get any extra information. So all they can really do is make kind of... they can guess and try to figure it out, but there's nothing for them to really go on. And they push into this tunnel, and as they push in, they find the way blocked, but the tunnel is packed thick with these old mummified corpses. And I expect the players to just kind of go, oh, it's blocked. Let's turn around. They don't do that. They start digging through the fucking corpses, and they're dry and all that stuff, so it's easy. But they start digging through it, and after they get like maybe 10 feet in, the corpses start to get less dry and much wetter. Trying to give them an idea like, hey, maybe you should stop. Then they have a talk. They decide like, okay, no, we'll go back. This is probably not good. And it's good because if they had kept going, they would have revealed just that corpse plug is effectively plugging up the river on the other side. But the plug is fucking deep. It goes on for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet, hundreds of meters, however you want to define it. It goes on for a really long time. And as you go further and further, there's more of this putrid water that will eventually kill you from poison damage. And there is something all the way on the other side, about a mile away through this tunnel. But they manage to avoid that whole situation. They come back out, they have the phone, they have Burke's head in a cooler, and they have to make their way back out through on London, which is easy enough for the most part. They go all the way through, they sneak their way through again, they distract some bobbies with some dynamite, which was a good move. Again, they sneak their way through, and then at one point there was a mechanic that we ended up not using with the wretches. During the second session, when they were going through on London, and Laszlo was gifting the wretches constantly, frequently. What that's supposed to do is indebt the wretches to that player, and then they'll show up at key moments. Like if that player gets bloodied in a fight, they'll show up, they'll teleport to you and cast Sanctuary on you, so that the bobbies can't attack you anymore. But one, they can't enter Parliament for reasons, and they didn't have a fight where that was relevant, so I just decided to kind of have it happen, just to give them a little extra flavor and give them some wonder in the moment. They encounter a bobby, which it kind of works out because everybody rolled shitty stealth. The bobby rolled shitty stealth and shitty perception, and a lot of the players did, I think, as well. So they just kind of walk into this bobby. It turns around and it goes to attack Laszlo, and its arm is stopped by this black smoke, the same black smoke that the wretches disappear in. And it goes to attack and it can't. So all the players just kind of stab it, and it dies. And in a situation like that, where there's no way a single target or even two targets can survive more than one round of combat, I'm not going to have everybody roll initiative. I'm not going to go into a full combat. I'm just going to go like, okay, this thing just did this. What are you guys all doing? Tell me. And just have a quick combat-esque thing. But, so just to give the players a little bit of wonder, and if they listen to this, then they'll understand what happened. But there will be things like that moving forward. Not every mission, of course, but there'll be, stuff to interact with, a la the wretches. But, anyway, they come out through, they're being pursued by a lot of bobbies now. They're so close enough that they decided to just kind of make a break for it. They're running, they got to deal with some eyes in the sky, some bobbies that are too close. They take them out, they make it back to camp. There's enough personnel back at the outpost to repel the bobbies that are coming in. Tenenbaum shoots one of them because they love Tenenbaum. They get into the outpost. Tenenbaum throws Laszlo on Mr. Pibb because apparently that's the official soda of Site-27. They have a little bit of a debrief with the outpost leader Cruller. They talk to Tenenbaum. They all leave. Then they get back to Site-27. They have a little bit, kind of a debriefing with Director Werner. Both Carson and Trey Cool are playing things pretty close to the chest. They're lying about stuff. Trey is hiding stuff. And the other three characters are appropriately rewarded for working with the Foundation and being cooperative. Of course, Dr. Daly and Gersh are Foundation employees anyway, so there's no reason to. But Laszlo is very cooperative, and he's rewarded with extra security clearance, and I'll be having a little session with him, a solo session, where first he'll talk to Agent Werner, Director Werner, solo real quick, and then he'll go back to the library and talk to his superiors. But Trey Cool and Carson kind of get reprimanded a little bit. But it all works out, and the session ends. So I talked a little bit about my design and some things here and there. And for most of my monster design in particular, I didn't exactly design it per like the CR rules. I'm not going by any calculators. I'm just kind of looking at, like, okay, what's my player's average damage output? What's their average to hit chances? What's their average AC? What's average this? What's average that? Which the average AC is easy because nobody has AC that's higher than a 16. So by giving monsters like a plus, I think I gave the bobbies like a +6 to hit, so they hit about 50% of 55% of the time. I gave the burke drake, the tendrils have a +7, and the main body is a +9. So the main body is almost guaranteed to hit. The tendrils have a pretty decent chance to hit of like a 60% chance. 60, 65, I forget exactly the math. I think it's 60. But they have a pretty good chance to hit. Could have been a little higher, but not the point. And then the bobbies have about 30 HP, which is, like I talked about before, is just under their at-will damage for one of the characters to kill in one turn. So the players can gang up on single targets to take them out, or like they can both target a single bobby to take it out in one turn, or they can burn resources to take another turn, or just smart play, strategic, tactical play in general, like Laszlo getting sneak attacks. That would be enough to probably take out a bobby in one turn. But he barely got any sneak attacks. He didn't set them up. The only character that could take them out relatively easily is our Ranger, who has 2-weapon fighting, 3 attacks per turn, blah, blah, blah. His average damage, if everything hits, is just above 30. So that works out. But that's one character, and that's the frontliner. So it kind of makes sense for a character like that to be able to take one of these targets out in one turn. Everybody else can't, unless they also use armor-piercing rounds. But again, that's a resource. So that's a little bit of my design philosophy for monsters, which I know I've talked about before in like 2 or 3 videos, where resourceless, you can't take them out in a single turn, but with resources, you can, depending on what those resources are. But, yeah, I guess I do have something else I want to talk about. I can't remember what it is. It does relate to this, but yeah, I don't remember what it is. I guess I'll have to record another video if I remember it. But yeah, the point is, session went really well. Yeah, I definitely understand how to DM a bit more now. Learned a good bit. I definitely I'm going to say I definitely railroaded in a few spots, but they were for minor things, like when the players ran into that Bobby towards the end, and they just to show off what the wretches do, basically. That's all it really was. Did I take away their agency in that moment? I guess a little bit, but it was a quick moment. It was a quick moment, and partially because the players didn't really roll particularly great on perception. They just kind of walked around the corner. I want to say that was it's a gray area, but it was really just to show off a minor thing. It wasn't going to affect much of anything. So, looking back, the second session, they did manage to avoid everything. I don't want to say I pulled my punches on them exploring, but no, I didn't really pull my punches. They did manage to avoid everything. More or less. Maybe. Yeah, it was fine. They rolled, monsters rolled, the players succeeded. Like, what do you want me to tell you? They didn't end up finding that optional stuff, but maybe in another mission they'll have reason to come back here. Maybe I'll reuse that design somewhere else, because it was a very loose design. Maybe I'll use this in like a greatest hits kind of thing, where all their failures come back to haunt them. Yeah, could be anything. Yeah, I guess that's about it. And a campaign diary for Site-27, Burke's Last Chance. First mission in the books. Got to come up with the next mission. Got some ideas. Now I remember the other thing I wanted to talk about, and it's definitely worth its own video, I think. So, peace.